Hi, everyone. This is Andrew Seaman. I'm LinkedIn's Senior News Editor for Job Searches and Careers, coming to you live from New York City. I'm so happy that you're joining us today. We have so many people already in the stream, so make sure that you introduce yourselves. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about your job search or what you want to do in your career, and then get your questions in about maybe how you can level up in your career, how you can go the distance in your job search, become a success in your job search, or maybe break into tech, because that's what we'll be talking about today. So keep introducing yourself in the comments, and also make sure you're connecting with everyone. So maybe you see someone in the stream who has the same ambition as you about going into a field, or maybe they already work in a career or area that you want to go into. Make those connections, because networking is the cornerstone of a successful job search and really a successful career. And what better time to start than right now? And we have so many people in the stream. I just want to say hello to a few of them. We have Rodney from Minnesota, Adelia from Albania, Blake from Tennessee, and Christine from New York City, where I am. I also saw, I think, Stacey Ann from Jamaica, and I see a bunch of other people in the stream right now. We have Abdul, Arun, David, and then we have Harry. So like I said, keep introducing yourself into the stream. Tell us about yourself, connect with each other, and then obviously get your job search questions in. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about how you can break into the tech industry. One of the things that's so common is that the tech industry is always hiring, at least recently, because there is a skills shortage among people who work in the tech industry. So there's just not enough people to go around for tech companies, whether it's a big company, maybe like Apple, to a very small company that's maybe just a few people, that's a startup. So a lot of companies are actually doing trainings, are launching programs to help people get into the tech industry, even if they have no background. So today we're going to be talking to a LinkedIn top voice and someone who runs a company that helps people break into the tech industry. So I want to welcome onto the screen Broadus Palmer. Welcome, Broadus.
Hey, Andrew. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, yes. And you are the founder of Level Up in Tech. And can we start off by asking, or you explaining how you got to create Level Up in Tech? Because you basically went from a non-tech background
Yeah.
to a tech background, and now you help other people get into the industry.
Yeah. So, I was in banking for about 13 years and, really just had the urge of doing something more, having a challenging career, better income stream coming in. And you know what? To be honest with you, it was just, I knew I wanted to get into tech, but I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. Right. So with that being said, I started researching and started talking to my peers that were in tech, and 1,000 different people took me 1,000 different directions. And I really had to narrow it down to what really the industry was demanding and try to learn that, which was cloud. Cloud was becoming very heavy in the tech industry at the time. And it didn't require me to have a college education. It didn't require any prerequisites, but learning, getting certified, and understanding how to solve problems. So with that, I took and I said, you know what? This is what I want to do, because if I can go from zero to a cloud hero and make this type of money in the industry, that's what I had my mind set on. I wanted something that was challenging. And share my journey on this platform on LinkedIn, I knew it was going to be people that was just like me, people who were, behind me as far as trying to do exactly what I was going to do. So I was like, let me share my journey to help them and, help them with any information that I could as far as my experience. Um, Going into AWS, which is Amazon Web Services, cloud service provider, I got um, certified in 3 areas, and I started landing interviews only to get into conversations and not really understand what they were talking about as far as how they were solving problems and the tools they were using to solve problems. So the certifications gave me a basic foundation, but to understand the third-party tools and specific services they were using, I didn't know anything about it. So I had to go back to square one and really focus on how companies were solving problems. What tools were they using? What were the industry trends going on? And this was what, 2017, right? So, and really focusing on my experience and helping them solve problems with those exact tools. So when I got into the interview, I was able to talk about hey, this is what I'm doing now, and this is what I can help you all do. And eventually that landed me my first role. And I started seeing huge gaps in the industry where, people wanted to not only get into tech, but they had no idea the amount of jobs that were available. And even if you picked one and you said, hey, I want to be a DevOps engineer, what do you do? Right? What courses do you take, or how do you build the foundation skills upon each other and more to advance? Right? How do you gain experience if no one will hire you to get that real experience? That's the catch 22 that we face in the industry. And how can we really focus on interviewing and showing we can solve problems? And the last part is what I'm going to be learning is going to be strategic for the real world in a job. This is what they're going to be doing seriously to be able to solve problems. So I created Level Up in Tech because I wanted to help people do exactly what I've done in a faster time frame and have a strategic learning path to success, so they can be able to push themselves to a level that they didn't think they can go to, but as well understand how you solve problems. How does Andrew solve the problem? And that's what we're working on right now.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And what I think is really interesting is because I basically work in tech now. I work for LinkedIn, and I had always worked at traditional media companies, and I always saw the tech industry as something that was really attractive. But I just thought, okay, that's not in my cards because I don't know how to code. I don't know how to do all these things. And it turns out that the tech industry hires people with journalism backgrounds because they need people to communicate with their members or communicate with their users. And in fact, I just spoke to someone earlier this week who basically was in the same position where they were a journalist for a number of years at a magazine, and then they got hired by a big tech company, not LinkedIn, but it's basically a similar path. And there's people who, they come from healthcare and they work in tech, or they have maybe an arts background and then they come in and do a design apprenticeship or something like that. So really what's interesting is that all the people in the stream that we're seeing, this applies to them, even if they don't think it does.
Yeah, and it's that's one thing that kind of kept me from tech, because growing up, I knew there was a tech industry, obviously, right? But to think that I would be able to get into the tech industry and learn and be able to be an asset. I mean, I wasn't smart in computer. Like, right? You told me to disassemble a computer and fix it. I couldn't tell you. If you tell me, hey, anything about, Linux or Windows deep dive, I couldn't tell you. I just knew how to use a PC to do what I need to do to access the internet. So I know even out here right now, it's a lot of people that was just like me, just trying to figure out where do they fit in the tech industry. And
Yeah.
my advice right now is just to, you know, figure out what you want to do, and look at the market and look at what jobs are out there, and just start by pinpointing something and trying it out, because you can always pivot. You can always say, I don't like this, let me try something else right now. Because I mean, you have some time, you got to give yourself some time and patience anyway. So just figure out what you want to do starting off. Look at the industry trends.
Yeah, no, that's really good advice. And then for people out there who say, I don't know even where to begin, I don't want to necessarily do what I'm still doing right now, and I want to break into the tech industry, maybe as a coder or something like that. What options are there available? Because obviously there are programs from places like Google and Amazon. And then, in fact, we have Ryan in the comments who said, just about to finish off my coding boot camp. I'm pumped to get into the industry. Dolores says, you can get certifications, but does that mean you can do the job if you don't know how the business solves problems and what tools they use? So what options are there for people who want to get into the tech industry?
Yeah, so I mean, let's start off with free options. There's always free material out there, like for front end and back end coding, like Free Code Camp, right? Um, and other free resources that you can use to understand the basics and the foundations. There's books out there that you can read. There's free online platforms that give you, environments to work in. Also, for a company that I currently am employed in with as well as Pluralsight, those are low cost options that you can focus on. It's other trainers out here that can help you get certified and learn real world skills as well for a low cost price. And then you have programs that are really like boot camps and coaching programs that focus on helping you gain the right skills to move into a job at a higher cost, but the initial investment can pay off over and over and over again, right? So what you have to understand is when people, you're looking to transition, and let's say, I'm just making an example where, let's say you're making $50,000 right now, and you say, I want to transition into a six-figure role, right? There are free resources out there that can help you understand, but just understand you get what you pay for as well, right? So if you're not investing into yourself with things that you need to learn, then you're not going to be able to propel your career into a level as quickly as you want. And the number one thing you need to look for is, especially when you're dealing with the program, look for a program that's really focused on helping you build the hands-on skills, help coach you to understand how companies are solving problems, and help coach you to figure out how you can solve that problem, right? Look for a program that's really going to challenge you to think, not just hold your hand through the process so you can go through a smooth process. Because what I say to our guests in Level Up in Tech is, we're not in the business of holding your hand. We're in the business of coaching you and steering you in the right direction. That means bringing all of the frustration right now, because you're in a path where you're learning and you're going to be frustrated. You're going to be dealt with imposter syndrome, and you're going to feel like you're not good enough. But that is exerting yourself for the fight. So in the words of one of my favorite boxers, Floyd Mayweather, exert yourself in training. So in the fight, you already have experience in dealing and taking yourself to those limits, because you don't want a program that holds your hand and then you get into a role and then get a project where you haven't, worked with a certain tool or service, or get roadblocks and you get into a culture shock and you get stressed and you don't know how to handle it. Get into a program or get into some training, whether it's free or not, that helps you understand how you can solve the problem, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what companies want. Companies want to see your thought process in solving those problems. So really focus on that, whether it's free, low cost, or even a more investment, as far as a boot camp or a program. That's what I would say.
Got it. And yeah, and I want to remind people who are out there to get their questions in. We already have a few, but I know there's a lot of people in the stream. We have Craig from Queens, Ahmad from Sudan, Simon from Toronto, and Adara from Philly. So keep the questions coming, and we'll get to them in just a bit. And Broadus, I guess one thing too is that for people who say, listen, I really don't have the money, I'm out of work or something like that, there are scholarships that are sometimes available, because I know I spoke to someone who said they were looking at a program at the City College of Chicago, I think it was, and it turned out there was a scholarship program to do like cybersecurity and basic intro to tech. So people can sort of search around for those too, and they could actually take maybe college level classes paid for by tech companies that give them scholarships, right?
Yes, and even paid for by the county or city that they're in. So like right now, Level Up in Tech is working with the city of Pittsburgh, actually the Urban Redevelopment Authority, that really doesn't even deal with any type of coaching, training, tech, or anything, but they want to put people that can afford to take themselves through coaching or training through programs that help them get into tech. Working with nonprofits out of my local city of Charlottesville, to help people get into tech. So there are organizations around the nation, especially it could be in your city or your town, that is dedicated to helping individuals like you who, may be out of work or maybe cannot even afford, the training that you need to get that coaching and training to move you into a role and change your life. So definitely do the research.
Yeah, no, I think that's really great. And we have a few people in the stream who are asking for specific organizations or programs that can help them. And obviously, you run Level Up in Tech, and I know Amazon has their Restart program, which is more of a sort of class-based training program. There's the
Yep.
Google Professional Certificates. Do you know any others that come to mind?
I think Microsoft has one as well. I'm not sure what it's called. And I think Cisco too. So Cisco, as far as hardware, routing and switching, has it as well. I'm
Yeah.
not sure of the names. I apologize to everyone out there.
No, and actually, and Cisco's a great example of why tech companies do this, is because not only do they need people to enter the industry so they could hire people, they also need people to enter the industry so they can have their clients hire them. So basically, like in Cisco's case, they actually teach people all over the world to fix their products or fix their systems, because they need people to go out in their communities and join companies and organizations that are their clients.
Yep.
Otherwise, they don't have people on the ground who can say, hey, I know how to fix this for Cisco.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons that this exists. And we have a question here from Kenneth, who says, how do you market yourself in your current position? For him, it's project controls with Van and Python coding knowledge experience. So for someone coming out of one of these programs, how do you suggest they market themselves? And we also have a similar question from Andara, who's finishing an accelerated cybersecurity program.
Yeah. So it's going to be one of those things you don't want to do, which is get out of your comfort zone and use LinkedIn, maximize your potential on LinkedIn. And let me tell you what I mean. So for guests that's coming out of Level Up in Tech, right? We have portfolios that we work on as well, projects to show how they solve problems. But you got to think of yourself as a business, not an employee, but think of yourself as a business that's trying to sell your services to a company to buy. That's how you should think of it, right? And as your services, you develop your skill set to really be an expert in the services that you offer. How are you getting the companies to understand what you do? How are you getting eyes on you? Are you utilizing this platform to the fullest potential? Meaning, are you sharing what you are doing, what you're working on? Because you'll be surprised at how many people actually look at what you're doing that you don't even know that's watching you. So sharing your journey, sharing what you're working on, connecting with professionals in the industry that you want to get in or the field that you want to get in, and sharing those things with them. If you have let's say you're working on a lab, you're working on a project, whatever, and you are facing roadblock after roadblock and you just can't figure it out, share that on LinkedIn. Ask for help. What's going to happen is you're going to get someone who has experience that's going to be able to connect with you and help you with the project or the lab or whatever the case that you're working on. What that does is builds relationships. And let's say for a person like me, if I have a role that's open in my company or the company I work for, one of the first people I'm going to think of is you, because I actually worked on that project with you. I actually understand how you solve problems and how you figure out things. So utilize LinkedIn, utilize social media, utilize any tool on here to market yourself and say, hey, look at me. Look at what I'm doing right now. I'm solving these problems. And these are the problems I'm seeing right now that companies are solving and what companies are going to have to solve in the next 6 months to a year and the tools that they're going to have to use. So guess what? I'm using those tools right now. Look at me. I want to share this with the whole world. Get out of your comfort zone. Start doing content. Start doing posts. Connect with as many people as you can. And that's going to ultimately get you to your destination, because you're not going to get it being comfortable in your bubble. You have to step out that bubble, break out into a new shell, a new you, and focus on what you got to do to land the road.
Yeah, no, that's great advice, because, and especially what's nice about tech is that there's no stagnation in tech. Everything's changing all the time.
Yeah,
so there's always something new to write about. There's always something new to talk about. So there's never sort of a gap of conversation. There's always something that's going to be coming up. And actually, we have a question here about from Sharon. And we have Duck also, who says, lately I'm hearing that certifications matter less than showing your work. For example, developing a portfolio, contributing to projects. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it's a balance, right? Where, and I want to give y'all the secrets of the system, right? So if you got a company that's asking, say, look, we want you to be certified in AWS or Microsoft or Google, most likely they're in the business. It's going to be beneficial to them, because what's happening is they probably have a partnership with one of those vendors that it benefits them for you to come in certified. But it also helps you too, right? So certifications helps companies know that you understand the basics of what that certification is. So let's say for AWS Certified Developer Associate certification, you're just learning what services and tools that AWS uses specifically to develop. It doesn't make you a developer, right? But what it shows in an organization is that you understand the basics of those tools, building it with a portfolio. So, like, let's say if you're working through labs, working through exercises, whatever the case may be, start getting creative and saying, what happens if I did this? Or what happens if I did that? Whether it works or not, right? Document that process, because if it works, then great. You figured out how to really be creative and build another solution on top of something else. But if it doesn't, you will understand why. And when you get into an interview and they start asking you about your experiences with those services or tools, you can talk about what you learned and what you've done so far to be able to try to solve problems. And you can understand why it didn't work. And you can attach that to what the organization is doing right now. Portfolios are huge. I think, you know, without certifications, you can get into the industry with portfolio because it shows how you solve problems. Certifications doesn't show how you solve problems. It just shows that you're able to do continuous learning, which is great. But you want to show how you can be able to solve complex scenarios and problems for that company, because ultimately that's going to land you the bag that you want.
Yeah, no, that's really fantastic advice because, for people who aren't on the inside, there are companies that contract, like you said, with AWS, with Azure, things like that. So if they're looking for someone who's going to help them specifically, and they're an Azure client or an AWS client, they're going to say, hey, we kind of like the AWS certification over the person that doesn't. So that's really great advice. And we have a question here from Miranda, who says, could you speak to the digital divide and how you overcame it? How did you initially justify tech expenses for yourself?
I looked at the end result, right? You know, as a person, you have to focus on yourself as, where do you want to be in the next 3 years, right? And my goal was, I wanted to have a high $100,000 salary for in tech, right? Because where I come from, I mean, just be honest here, in banking, I was making 40K a year, which is nothing wrong with that, but I wanted more. So for me, taking the strategic steps from 40K to over 100K, I had to look at the road and the steps that I had to take to get there. And understanding, even if the training that I taken, let's say, was $20,000 through a program, if that was going to get me to my goal, that was going to pay for itself over and over in a return on investment. So that's how you got to look at it. You are the best stock that you can ever invest your money into. You would never lose your investment if you do not quit. The moment you quit, the moment you say, you know what, I can't do this, I'm going to back up, that's the moment you lose your investment. So it doesn't matter how much you invest into yourself. It just matters if you're willing to see it through. Because if you are, then that investment is going to pay for itself over and over again. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's great advice. And another question, I think this was really good because a lot of industries, there's an ageism component where a lot of people feel that, I'm too old for that industry, or maybe an industry has a specific sort of culture where it just seems like, older people aren't welcome, and the tech industry can be easily one of those. And Michael says, what advice do you have for people in their 40s and 50s? How can they break into the tech industry?
Do the same work, right? Keep plugging, because at the end of the day, whether you're 40, 50, 20, or 30, if a company turns you down for any reason, it just means that you're not a right fit for that company and what their goals are aligned to, right? So you keep plugging, because you're going to get the yes. Don't let the no's keep you dragged down and thinking that you're not good enough, because with age comes wisdom and experience. So you're able to bring a certain level of experience at age 50 going through your career that some people that's beginning their career cannot. So understand your expertise and how you solve the problem. And that could be enough to land you into a position that you never thought you could ever land. So just keep plugging. Don't worry about the no's. Focus on how you can get the yes. And the yes might take a while, but when the yes comes, it's going to be bigger than you ever imagined.
Yeah. And I think also, especially if you're an older job seeker and you go into training and you say, hey, I want to take this risk, I want to change things up. It shows that, you're not the stereotype of someone who is in the decline of their career. You're actually wanting to start and really go to a new level. You are looking to learn new things. It shows that you're not that stereotype that they may have. So I think that's really great advice. Like you said, just do the work and show up and show yourself for what you're doing, because it's commendable.
Yep.
And uh, Melina says, tech is ever changing. How do you stay current with those changes? So how do you personally, because obviously, you're under pressure to teach people how to sort of enter the industry.
Right.
So how do you stay current? What do you do?
Yeah, it's all about relationships. It's all about your network here on LinkedIn, right? So connecting with great people that's in the industry and having those conversations. So for instance, if you're trying to get into the industry, and let's say you want to work for a company like, I don't know, Capital One or whoever, and you don't know what Capital One is doing to solve problems, connect with somebody that works there and ask them, what are you doing? Right? Like, what tools are you using? What are you guys doing to solve problems? And then try to implement that in your own environment, right? As best as you can. So what we do at Level Up in Tech is we have partnerships, right? Partnerships with companies, looking at what companies are doing now and having those conversations where they say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is the tools that we're using that we foresee that it's going to be big in 2022. And looking at industry trends yourself. The most important thing that you can do right now that I see some people in tech don't do is read, right? Go to like CIO.com or LinkedIn News, read the articles that experts are writing, because that's going to tell you where the industry is going, what tools and services are going to be big for this industry, and how to use them. So make sure you're really focusing on those trends and focusing on building the relationships to get the information to understand what companies are doing. Then implement that in your game plan, your strategy. Assess your strategy every month to see if these are the steps that's going to hit your goal. If these are the steps that are taking that hasn't gotten you close to your goal, then reassess what you need to do and continuously meet people to learn new information.
Great advice. Reading is always important, no matter what industry you're in. And also, sorry for any background noise. It's the Symphony of New York City outside. So it's horns and street sweeping. And, we have a good question here from Charisse, who asked, how do you know when you and your portfolio are ready to apply? So obviously there are programs where you graduate on the other side, right. But if you're doing maybe some self-training, maybe you've gone through a boot camp, how do you know you can say, listen, I can do this job?
When you're looking at the job and you have 50%, at least 50% of what they want you to know in a portfolio, you can talk to it. So let's say, and I'm not expecting a lot of people to understand this, but let's say in cloud, you have a company that wants you to understand Terraform. They want you to understand configuration management tools like Ansible or Puppet. They want you to have some Linux admin skills. They want you to have some type of scripting skills with the language like Python, Ruby, whatever the case may be. If you have in your portfolio, you have some projects that you can talk about your experience, whether it's one, right? It doesn't matter. If they actually tell me your experience about Terraform and you have a project about Terraform, then you could talk about a certain experience that you had building that, what the scenario was and the strategic scenario task action results method that you can use. So that's what I would say, just focus on that and focus on building and just continuously building, because if you have all the skills for a job or a role and you feel comfortable, that's not the role for you. I'm gonna tell you why. Because 2-3 months you're gonna get bored if it's no growth, and you're gonna look for another job. If it doesn't scare you, it's not for you. It's supposed to be scary, because you know why? It's supposed to be some things in there that you haven't done yet. It's supposed to be things that you need to learn and grow into. So you never know when your portfolio is ready. Just look at the job description and see if you can match at least 50% of the job description to your portfolio, so you can be able to have that conversation in the interview.
Yeah, I think that's a really good gauge. And, for a final question, we have one here from Craig, who says, besides certifications and projects, what is the number one thing people can do to stand out in an interview? So what's your interview advice?
Come in there with confidence. And I mean confidence. Come in there saying, yes, I know how to do this. Or, hey, If they ask you a question and you don't know, hey, I haven't had experience with that, but I'm pretty sure I'm able to get up to speed quickly with that and help you guys solve the problem. Or if they ask you something, if you haven't worked with that and you work with something that's similar, hey, I haven't had experience with that, but this is what I work with that is similar, and this is where I see the difference in it. So if you come in there, regardless of how you say it, if you say it with confidence, I've seen people with that come in an interview with confidence, with less desirable skills than the technical manager wants, but is able to get the job because they made the technical manager believe that they are the one that can do the job and they can learn it, right? It's not about, do you have all the skills? Some companies want somebody, okay, if you have a little bit of skills, we want to see, do you have the passion to continuously learn, to help us innovate, to help us solve problems, and the confidence, right? And if you could exemplify that, that's going to get you in there. So the number one thing is, regardless of the skills that you have, I don't care if you got 100% of those skills. If you don't have confidence in that interviewing room or that virtual meeting, you're not going to get the job. So confidence is key.
Yes, confidence is key. That's a great place to end on. And we also have a bunch of comments. A lot of people are saying thank you for the conversation. And we also have Justin, going back to our discussion about people in their 40s and 50s. Justin said, I made a midlife career change. It was painful and took over a year, but it was so worth it. And Harvey said that there's never been a better time to invest in yourself than right now. So I think that's, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Broadus. And, you know, if people want to find you, we're flashing your LinkedIn information on the bottom of the screen. And obviously you're a LinkedIn top voice. So you are always posting great content, and that's why you got that honor. And then obviously you are the founder of Level Up in Tech. And like I said, you're a LinkedIn top voice. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Andrew. Thank you to the LinkedIn staff as well. I appreciate y'all.
Of course. Well, thank you. And thank you all for joining us. And just a reminder that we're here almost every Friday. I'll be off next week because there'll be another great show airing on the LinkedIn news page. So stick around for all of that information. Check the LinkedIn news page, which you can find because that's where you're actually watching the show right now. And on Monday, we have another great show coming up about making boardrooms more diverse, how the SEC decision can change corporate America. Board diversity has been a huge issue. I don't know why, because it makes common sense for boards to be diverse. Research shows that diverse boards actually make companies stronger and better businesses. So see why some companies are, you know, bucking that trend. So make sure you tune in on Monday because that'll be coming up on the LinkedIn news page. And obviously, like I said, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in a couple of weeks. And until then, make sure you're taking care of yourself. The pandemic is still sort of in a crazy time right now. So follow your local health guidelines because you can only get hired. You can only be a good candidate if you're safe and well enough to do so. And then until next time, best of luck.